welcome to the second of our 2023-24 series of webinars from BISLN, the British and International Schools Library Network, brought to you by Concilium Education. I'm Andy Homden, editor of International Teacher magazine. Today's session is led by Sally Flint, who is looking at libraries and well-being. For Sal, a library is one of the hubs of a school community, and as such, has a very special part to play when it comes to the well-being of each and every member of that community. Sal.
Hi, thank you, Andy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session. As Andy said, we'll be exploring the concept of well-being within the international school library setting. And leading into that, I just wanted to have a quick look at what the experts are saying about well-being. And I guess I should preface that by saying, even where I slightly differ with them, I've got nothing but huge respect for all the incredible work that the librarians and library organisations do. As you know, we librarians, we need to stick together. So the first quote, I don't need to read it out, you can read it out. The one from the ALA focuses on the stuff, the goods on offer, and it's linked to long-term well-being. The big picture, if you like, of wellness and growth through lifelong learning. And I agree with everything that's written, but it's not quite what I'm getting at. Do you know what I mean? It's not quite where I'm heading to when I'm looking at well-being. The second one, it seems to be focusing on literacy and learning as an inroad to wellness. It's also true, and it's also very important, but still not quite what I mean. I really do like the third quote from the British Library, especially its focus on the individual. I know, well, I suspect that you'll share my irritation of libraries that are seen simply as a warehouse for books, as if people have nothing to do with them at all. But I guess my criticism of this quote, and maybe I'm not being fair, is it reads just a little bit like an advertisement for a 5-star luxury spa weekend or something like that. A refuge for the mind, a haven for the soul. I mean, I just want to know, where's the jacuzzi? So if we could flip to the next slide, Val, please. So I think on this page, and you can see I've put them in green, we're getting close to how I think well-being and libraries link together. I love how the IB quote underscores the importance of libraries as safe and nurturing spaces where students can cultivate their well-being. The IB quote does make me smile, though, I'm not going to lie, especially the line about the quiet sanctuary of the library. In my dreams, I've got a vision of our school library at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Kids letting off steam at the end of a busy day, piling in, blooming bags dumped everywhere, looking for their siblings, doing homework to get it out the way, hanging out, waiting for late ECAs to begin. To be honest, they're quite often chasing around like demented hyenas. Yeah, they're happy. They're not really doing any harm. They're changing books. But a quiet sanctuary? I don't think so. Anyway, I digress, and that's all fine, because I don't think well-being in a busy school library is all about being zen. But it is that very last quote from the United World Colleges that I think really does get to the crux of what wellness in a school context is. I particularly like that it seems to put well-being as a prerequisite of learning. Phrases like treasure trove of wellness, refuge, but also significantly exploration, self-discovery, mental and emotional health, all based in the here and now, it seems, pinpoint exactly what I'm trying to get at when we're looking at well-being within a library context. We could have the next slide, Val, thanks. Anyway, so hopefully just having had a quick look at those definitions has helped us all, in our own way, reflect on what we think well-being is within a library context. As I say, I think the United World Colleges definition is really strong. But I still, if I'm honest, I still do find it really difficult to pin down exactly what well-being is. It's not like you can touch it, and it's something slightly different for every single individual who walks into the school gates. Despite this, though, I believe that as librarians, and I sound a little bit earnest now, but I do believe this, that as librarians, it is our responsibility to ensure that our libraries are central to well-being story. The big question, of course, is how do we manage that responsibility? Well, what I've done is I've tried to think about our commitment to well-being within the areas of library development that are our sort of day-to-day bread and butter. You know, things that are already central to our everyday school practice. So I've separated them into collections, curriculum, physical environment, community engagement, digital wellness, And then finally, staff training, support and resources. Now, but that is a lot. Okay, there's a lot to get through. So it's a little bit of a case of buckle up and join the race through. I won't be able to mention everything in the slides. I won't even try to. But to compensate for that, what I will do is after the session, when we've all talked and everything, I'll put together some handouts and we'll make sure they're full of practical suggestions for enhancing the well-being of our library users. You know, the kind of resources that's really just handy to have and refer to day to day. Now, Rob's going to present on digital wellness. So if you get bored of listening to me, please don't click off until after you've heard that part, because you're in for a real treat. I really do love how Rob reflects upon and approaches this topic. So if we could go to the next slide, well, thank you. Let's have a look at the librarian's role in relation to collections and curriculum and well-being. Right, let's think about this. So, as librarians and educators, as we've said, our mission extends beyond academics to the cultivation of a library collection that fosters the well-being of our students. It is our duty to provide resources and programmes that support well-being. And I think a practical step we can take to do this is to curate non-fiction collections centred all around well-being themes, the ones that support classroom learning and also stand as a valuable well-being collection in their own right. We need to develop well-being among students by expanding their worldviews, and we can do that through getting into their hands diverse books on identity, culture, mental health, relationships. Oops, that's my alarm. Career guidance. We need to create great collections to support minority pupils, and that includes EAL, LGBTQ+. In fact, there's someone I found online, Margaret Berger. I bet lots of you will already know her writing, and she writes really well on this. So when we've finished, I'll include links to her articles as well. Creating that collection needs a lot of thought, okay? We can't just pop to the first kind of catalogue that comes up. And I think it really benefits from collaborative input. Librarians too often, in my view anyway, work alone and they're separated away from other key school figures. But by working together, we can ensure that we address the full spectrum of curriculum-related needs. For instance, when mindfulness became a focus in our school's PSHE curriculum, we quickly were able to assemble a selection of books on the topic, which were showcased and shared throughout various communication channels. And they were shared with teachers, parents and students. They were also aligned with the school's wellbeing initiative, and we made a big effort to make sure that they were tailored to be age appropriate. So that's good, yeah, that's all well and good and important. Aligning our non-fiction library collection with the school curriculum serves as a very important part of enhancing wellbeing. It's actually also pretty easy to do, to be honest, but it's not enough. I think it's equally important to broaden our scope and go beyond this in other library collections. And specifically, I'd like to look at our fiction collections. There's a chap called Sam Duncan, I don't know if you know him, and in a book, Reading Pleasure and Reading Circles on Adult Emergent Readers, he talks really quite inspiringly, I think, on how reading for pleasure improves mental health. And I mean, I think we'd probably all agree that it applies to younger audiences too within schools. It just seems obvious to me that reading fiction enhances well-being. However, despite that, to be honest, the studying I've completed when preparing for this webinar, it would suggest that a lot more research is still needed to strengthen the evidence base for that claim. Again, I can share some links if you're interested. I think collecting that evidence actually would be a really good dissertation topic for a keen librarian out there, but I don't think that's going to be me. So what do we know for certain? Well, we know that to improve well-being, our library fiction collections must meet the personal narrative of our students. This is a principle reinforced by the findings in the Journal of Librarianship and Information Science. The very essence of well-being in education lies in recognising and nurturing the individuality of each student's interests It's just so important that students find their unique perspectives mirrored in our collections, and they have to feel that their individual voices are acknowledged and heard. Well, they shouldn't just feel it, they should be acknowledged and heard. So how can our collections meet personal interests when, as you know, we've got limited space, some of us have got limited money, and most of us have got lots of kids. I'm talking about the library here, not at home, yeah? So just like when creating our non-fiction collection, with our well-being enhancing collections, we also need to be collaborators. We must work with the students directly. We need to take that initiative. We need to step into our students' world, enter classrooms for discussion, mingle with the kids on the library floor during breaks, and we need to actively seek out student input. I think we should champion multiple copies of books that address well-being, and that address them both overtly and subtly, recognising that every story contributes to that conversation on mental health and personal development. In every genre, for every age group, we must strive to include books that tackle life's challenges, and we must foster opportunities to reach students who may not be studying their own language as well. It's too easy to overlook that important group of students. So, in international school settings, another thing to consider is local culture. We have to respect local culture, and we have to ensure that we've got books that are relevant. It's often actually quite a critical factor when curating our fiction selections. It's a huge topic of debate when exploring wellbeing issues, especially, I think, when the culture of the parents and the school values are in conflict. So all the time we need to be mindful of the likely impact of our book selections on the well-being of all our different groups of users. The same kind of thing, the same thought process applies when choosing texts exploring mental health issues. In fact, I'll just tell you a little story. I remember having a really heated a really big argument with the school principal when we were looking at 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. You'll know the book. Despite concerns about parental reactions and copycat suicides, my argument was that having the book facilitated open discussions on its challenging themes, and that would be better, more beneficial than just banning the book, especially as the students will have been exposed to the content through other mediums. But I should say I didn't win that argument. So a poor book that had been minding its own business in the library for ages had to be removed. I don't really know as I need to tell you this, but I will. I'll share with you that wicked, evil school principal also happened to be my husband. Anyway, again, let me get back on task. Moving on. So now let's say we've got a pretty good fiction collection, we've got a pretty good non-fiction collection, and they both implicitly and explicitly address well-being. The librarian's responsibility is now to make sure those books get into both the hands of those people that should have them and avoid getting them into the hands of those people shouldn't. So until then, I'm afraid our work is not done. How do we do this? Well, careful cataloguing comes into play. It can make it clear what the books are addressing. And I think that's useful for the teachers and the parents to keep an eye on the likely impact of the books on wellbeing. Something I did for that in early years was to focus on wellbeing in relation to the IB learner profile. You know, the attributes, there's like communicating, can't remember what they are now. Well, anyway, you'll know what I'm talking about. So we catalogued the books according to which area they're most obviously fitted into. And that way, parents and teachers could quickly look on the catalogue if they wanted to explore a particular aspect of wellbeing. I mean, realistically, the kids, especially, I guess, the bigger kids, aren't going to come in the library to search out books on wellbeing or anything else, maybe for that matter. So I have got a few ideas about how we can help students access the wellbeing resources that we have, but I am conscious of time. So what I'll do is I'll put those as a handout and we can share them with you later. And is that a good place for me to just stop talking for a minute so we can all have a chat?
Yeah, that'd be great. And if we can move on to the next slide there, Val, thank you so much. Now, there's been some interesting comments in the chat box as you were talking there, Sal. So, Rebecca, if you're there, very interested to find out more about your mindful reading workshop with an outdoor pickup library. Rebecca, if you're there, could you just unmute and perhaps tell us a little bit more about that? That would be great.
Hello.
Hi there.
So it was a simple idea, actually. I put some books outside on a table and in a shelf, and then we put mats on the grass. I'm in Phuket, so it's always summer. In other places of the world, you need to choose summer. And then we put some umbrellas and had some cushions on the floor. And then our students, they signed up for workshops. So it was K to 12. So we asked English teachers to sign up, and then we showed them practices, how to focus better while they are reading. So they set an intention first. We did some breath work, like some very simple ones. They set an intention, and sorry, the students are in the background. Then we showed them some techniques to focus better. So we used mindfulness techniques for reading. So we let them read, and then we showed them these techniques, and they tried it out. Because sometimes we are reading, and we are reading 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, and we didn't really realize what was happening within the page. So we showed them techniques to be aware and focus better. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Sounds fantastic. Of course, you've got that huge advantage in setting out an outdoor library by being in Phuket. Which school are you at in Phuket?
UWC.
Oh, UWC, fantastic.
So United World College.
Yes,
yeah.
United World College in Phuket. And I can see in the background that the sun is actually shining. We're all very envious of you, although I have to say I'm speaking to you from the west coast of Ireland, and the sun is actually shining here. It's a lovely spring day. But perhaps...
So that's nice.
It's lovely. Beatrice, if you're there, you've described yourselves as the secondary librarian in a busy state all through multilingual school in the UK. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about your school and how that compares with sunny Phuket, who just go outside and put the cushions down and start encouraging the kids to come and read under the trees. Beatrice. Beatrice, are you there? Not sure that Beatrice is there at the moment, so we'll come back. But is it Chino from the British School in Jakarta? In fact, you've got two of your former colleagues here. Rob George and I used to work at the British School in Jakarta some time ago. Chino, can you tell us a little bit about your school in Jakarta and what it's like there at the moment?
Hi, Chino from British School Jakarta. So I am deputy head of library. So I manage two library with our head of libraries, primary and secondary school. Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your library.
So last January, I think we had a visit from the LKSW participant, the other like workshop in Jakarta, at GIS. So they spend some time to visit our library. So the library here, we have two libraries, primary and secondary library. So primary library serve like year 1 up to, not year 1, KG up to year 6, and secondary school from year 7 to year 13. So they're about my school, my library, our library.
It's a lovely school, and I remember the libraries very well, but I suspect it's changed a lot since Rob and I were there.
Yeah, I met with Rob last time.
Oh, you met with Rob last time? So
yeah, he came here.
Fantastic, because Rob's still at the Alice Smith and school in Kuala Lumpur, and that's one of the big advantages of being close to each other in the same region. You can get together, visit each other, and that networking is really important, isn't it? When you actually are able to see people face to face. And what we're trying to do here is to join people together, through online meetings and online meetups and networking, so we can share that kind of experience on an even wider basis. So great to hear from you, Chino, and to hear what you're doing. And thanks, Rebecca. I've just got a message from Beatrice that she's her sound doesn't seem to work. Well, that's a real shame, because I'd really like to hear about the school in the UK. But I think for now, let's press on. And as I say, as experiences and questions occur to you, just put them in the chat box and we'll pick them up. So Val, let's go on to the next slide, please.
All right, so shall I keep going then, Andy?
Back to you, please, then,
Okay.
Sal. Yes.
So looking at the physical environment and well-being. Now, I know I'm talking a lot, nothing new there, I can imagine you all saying. So I'll just try and keep this section nice and short, yeah? So obviously a library's design caters to diverse learning activities, yeah? We have to offer quiet study areas, group collaboration spaces and flexible zones for both teaching and presentations. And the quotes we looked at the beginning, they address the well-being linked to physical spaces. Attention to detail is important, and that ranges from the natural light illuminating reading areas. I guess we're not all as lucky as Rebecca being outside in Phuket under the trees, to acoustics conducive to quiet study. We need to consider all of these and not overlook their importance, I think, in relation to student well-being. And that's actually getting a great feel for library setups is one reason why networking and school visits and sessions like this are so valuable, because we can share ideas. And it's kind of, I think, valuable to just keep in our head well-being when we are looking at library spaces and just keep it to the forefront of our thoughts. And in a way, that's it really about physical spaces. The slide acts as a checklist of, you know, what positive library spaces can be. But before we do move on, I would just like to spend a little bit of time talking about the library as a safe and welcoming environment, because I just think it's so important. Actually, the School Library Association has some really good resources on this as well. So a welcoming environment needs to exist for everyone, but it's particularly important, I think, for vulnerable students. And we need to be able to offer emotional support and create a real sense of belonging for these students. You'll all have kids who come to the library, in essence, to hide out. They don't want to read, perhaps, but they don't want to be loners walking the school corridors. And these kids are always the ones that they do really tug at my heartstrings. Problem is, sometimes if students realise you've cottoned on to the fact that they're using the library as a bit of a sanctuary or a hideaway, it will stop them coming. So we need to be careful in managing that dynamic as well. And perhaps sometimes, you know, if it's just a one-off, somebody's having a bad day, there's no need to do anything at all, really, except be there. But I'd say that when you spot a pattern of retreating into the library, it really is essential that we let a pastoral school leader know. Now, lots of librarians are teachers, but not all librarians are teachers. And perhaps those ones, maybe local hire staff, I don't know if it's fair to say that, but won't necessarily have been trained in the referral systems that are in place within a school. So consequently, I think it's really important that there should be a link person between library staff and teaching staff, so that all concerns, you know, students of concern can be addressed and their needs can be met. So that's a key point for me about the physical environment and well-being. Students need to know that they can be safe in the library. It is a sanctuary, but that doesn't mean that we never have any intervention. And library staff should, in my view, they deserve to have training on this. And we need to know which students to be looking out for as well. Now, when I was putting this all together, I was reflecting on my own library practice. And it became apparent that actually, whilst I'd often thought I was enhancing well-being because I was like really keen on making the library a fun and vibrant place to be, I think the truth is I was quite often missing the well-being mark completely. So we did all sorts of wacky things. You know, we had an obstacle course, football net, keep fit zone. Charlie in the chocolate factory bed was interesting. We had a rapper stage TARDIS. I think we turned into Hogwarts for a while, and then for a different spell of time, we became an under the sea immersive experience. We had the karaoke garden, we had Santa's grotto, and it was good. I'm not like, well, it sounds a bit like I'm showing off, but it was good, but it was bad, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to say that I don't think when we did all that I had good links to well-being, and I could have catered more to those most vulnerable students. And I do regret that. So what I'm saying, time, budget, enthusiasm levels, they're all factors in what you can provide in terms of the icing on the cake for having fun in the physical library space. Cake, that was another thing we often had. But the important point is that I've now realised that an approachable librarian with a smile and an empathetic approach, it tops all the cake in the world in enhancing student wellbeing. And it's particularly important for those vulnerable children. So in terms of physical space, I think the #1 priority is that the students feel welcome and that they feel safe.
It's
Right.
interesting, Sal, because I've just seen in the chat box there that Gino in Jakarta has a well-being corner in the library. So that takes your ideas a little bit further and actually does focus on the well-being theme. Gino, can you just tell us a little bit about what is in that well-being corner?
So the secondary library has just been refurbished like 2 years ago. So it was an idea from the SLT, the secondary leadership team, to add that corner to change the corner into the well-being corner. So we created a space that students can read or can do something that related to their well-being. We also put some books about well-being there and some relaxing games. So they might use the space during the day. That's
And
all.
did they go towards it? Did they use it?
Yeah, they use it very often, especially the older student, like the upper level of secondary students.
And those are the students who are going to be under stress a little bit from exams and exam pressure
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah, waiting
So
for
that
the
played a
next.
role. Yeah.
Yeah, we put like a comfy, not a sitting area, not a sofa, but it's more like you can sleep on that place. It's a soft seating.
Yes. So a
Quite
nice
relaxing.
relaxed environment, but as Sal was saying, welcoming, and I can imagine a big smile on your face as people came in and started using that corner. So thanks for that, Chino. Okay, Sal, let's go on to the next slide, and then I'd like to bring in other people to tell us about their library. Perhaps Marcella, perhaps Teresa can tell us about their library in a little bit in a few slides' time. But back to you, Sal.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So let's look at well-being in relation to community engagement. How does this all tie in together? Well, I guess I see it as 2 key areas. The first part is figuring out how our library's actions support the well-being of others, both in our school and the broader community. And then the second strand is understanding, I guess, how involving ourselves in those efforts actually also boosts our own well-being. It's kind of that idea of helping our own well-being by giving back to others. So lots of, my ideas and what I'm going to say here, it's just good practice really. But again, like keeping well-being at the forefront of our thoughts, it can really make regular good practice be beneficial to students' well-being and positive mental health. So the library's wellbeing role in fostering community engagement can be quite straightforward. I guess at its core, it can be seen as being centred around ECAs and student involvement. So things like organising book clubs and reading groups, along with hosting competitions, celebrations of literature. These activities can all be put into place with a specific wellbeing focus. One memory that stands out for me is the sheer joy of a little girl who'd been struggling with her reading, and then she got involved in the Year 3 readers competition, and she ended up securing the runner-up position. And I mean, yeah, on that occasion, her well-being just soared. So that was a lovely day. It was unforgettable. We can extend our community and commitment well-being a little further by also engaging parents. For example, by hosting workshops that focus on fostering a love of reading amongst children. And then we have to remember, of course, to share with parents how reading with children enhances their well-being. So this aspect of community engagement not only brings people together, but does foster, as I've said, a sense of inclusion, and that enhances well-being. We can go further still. We could take pride in participating in cultural and historically significant events. What we used to do in Patna during the celebration of Loy Krathong in Bangkok, we would create nice thematic library displays and provide relevant reading material for classroom use. And then in our little maker space, we'd kind of make the Loy Krathongs. And that was really important because a school with such a UK focus, the emphasis on Thai culture really made the Thai children feel valued, made them feel respected, made them feel included. So obviously that was going to enhance their well-being as well.
I remember Loy Krathong very well, but perhaps not everyone knows about Loy Krathong, and it is a really beautiful part of Thai culture. Could you just tell us a little bit about Loy Krathong and what's involved?
Well, you put me on the spot now, Andy. It's kind of like, I don't know, like maybe Rebecca in Phuket could give us more information. It's a new beginning, and it's where we can wash away, if you like, things that have gone badly the year before, and we celebrate and respect our elders and betters, and it's a new start, a fresh start. Not dissimilar, I guess, to New Year, but more tasteful.
Is that the one where they put the little boats on the ponds and the
Yeah.
rivers? It's wonderful. And they just launch them across the river. And I remember at Bangkok Patna, we had a pond when we had the library in the middle of the pond. We used to float the kratons on that pond there. It was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And the students will dress up, and it's a chance to like really celebrate culture. It's wonderful.
I think that acknowledgement of culture wherever you are. And I'm getting in from Beatrice now that she runs lunch clubs, changing every few months so they can target different people. And I think that's a really great idea that you have different things for different kids and different adults in the school, encouraging different forms of friendship. I don't know if Beatrice, you can unmute now and just give it another go to see. You can tell us a little bit more about it. I think we're still having trouble with Beatrice's mic, so never mind. Let's carry on, and back to you again, Sal.
Yeah. So there's lots of examples. You have community events that either subtly or directly boost well-being. Also visits, I suppose, being the obvious one. We had a chap called Rapper Man come to our school, and he focused specifically on inclusivity so that we could tie it into wellbeing themes. In addition, I guess, collaborating with nearby schools to share author visits fosters networking and helps us all manage the logistics. And that contributes to our own professional wellbeing, which I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of. But back to the kids who don't quite fit in, I think when we are organising these kind of events, they're often the ones who jump in to help prepare, and we can have a nice chat with them while they're doing that. So it's really beneficial for their well-being as well. There is, of course, the downside to using the library extensively for community engagement to enhance well-being. And that downside kind of develops the better we get at it. Because at times, as poor librarians, we can just feel like our libraries are constantly being hijacked. We're just like rushed off our feet, and our own well-being can take a bit of a nosedive. It's also, I guess, difficult to focus on exactly what we want to get from each event, whether well-being linked or otherwise. So we just have to manage it carefully. I think you'll all know about occasions where community engagement in other school areas means that our libraries become waiting rooms, and our librarian patience can become severely tested. You know, those times when all the hot, sweaty kids come in after sports day, or they're hanging around in the library waiting for a school rehearsal. So I wonder, am I asking too much? Perhaps I am, to say that these scenarios can be seen as chances to enhance inclusion and well-being. I'm not saying we should be pushovers, but as librarians, we should be flexible. And I think, having that perspective of the bigger picture can enhance the well-being that comes with being involved with these school-wide initiatives. I'm thinking back to our karaoke stage. I think at the time, the students were putting on a production of Shrek. So we just went out into the garden, And, you know, we just like, if you can't beat them, join them approach almost, you know, and they had so much fun singing the Shrek tunes. And then specifically, we tied it back to wellbeing, looking at gender roles in the play, and got some texts and books that supported that. Incidentally, I'm all for a library garden as well. I think, you know, it's just getting outside into the natural space is huge for wellbeing. So I guess all that was about the first thread of wellbeing and community engagement. But as I've said, community engagement in our library goes beyond our own walls, and it's about responding to and integrating with the broader community's needs and that giving back to others. And international school libraries hold a unique position in that we really are able to make a significant impact on the well-being of others. So whether it's fundraising to create libraries in local schools or simply providing some books or some stationery, it's all good. And as I said, I think if we're helping other people's well-being, then inevitably we're helping our own. Actually, for me, getting involved in that type of thing probably was the biggest highlight of my time as a librarian. But again, I'm aware of time, so what I'll do is I'll put a list together of resources of how we can get involved more widely in the community. Right then, Andy, do you want to move on to talking about digital wellness?
I think so. Thanks very much indeed. I love the way, Sal, you bring in the reality of what it is being in a school. This is not a theoretical stuff. I can see all those sort of hot, sweaty bods coming in from football or whatever, and the kids just waiting for, you know, the show that's going on in the evening, and the parents starting to arrive to pick them up. So what I'm getting is a picture of a really, really authentic area, an authentic and used space, which is busy as well as a refuge for some. And if we take into account things like the corners that you will create, like Chino's Wellbeing Corner, I just see the movement and the life. And for me, that's what a library was all about. When I was a head of school, I loved going into libraries and seeing it being used and just being alive. But enough of that. Let's move on. Thanks very much indeed, Sal, for the time being. Let's move on to Rob, and let's have a look at some of the issues to do with digital wellness and how libraries can help with that. Over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Andy, and so much to take on board from Sally there, and it's lovely to see so many librarians here. Now, for sure, I don't think digital well-being needs to be put onto your radar. I mean, the truth is, it's staring us in the face right now, and every waking hour. Whether it's work-related or self-imposed, most of us spend an alarming amount of time glued to screens. But let's shift our focus from personal struggles to the well-being of library users. And by asking whether we are, as librarians, inadvertently contributing to their screen time, and if there's something that we can do about it. So to reflect on this, I will look at the situation in my secondary school library. So firstly to mention, I think, is our ebooks. We have a substantial ebook collection that coexists with our hard copy collection. And I think that one, rather than diminishing the physical book collection, the ebooks enhance our provision by just providing the reader with more options. They prove especially valuable when readers are off campus and need to borrow materials. And whilst ebooks can contribute to screen time, their existence alongside the hard copy collection seemed to me to give a balanced approach. And also, whilst our fiction book ebook collection justifies its existence in terms of statistics, a very, very large proportion of our fiction loans continue to be hard copy. However, if I move on to magazines and newspapers, our library has experienced a significant shift in approach. And whilst we still maintain a rack of physical magazines, the rest of our collection has transitioned to nearly 100% online. Now, with that, the star of our show is our press reader subscription, which grants access to a whopping 7,000 plus online publications, including I think it's 725 from the UK. And for pragmatic reasons, we've also made a deliberate move away from hard copy magazine subscriptions. And our previous subscriptions to The Day, The Economist, New Scientist, Scientific American, and Sight and Sound have been replaced with online-only access. So the thing is, does this increased screen time for magazines and newspapers negatively impact our users? And for sure, that's a valid concern, but it's difficult. But from my perspective, the sophistication and breadth of digital resources makes it a worthwhile trade-off. Nevertheless, perhaps we could be and should be exploring offering more hard copy access to strike a balance. Now, I'm not sure whether it's for all of us, but it feels natural to me. When it comes to hardcore non-fiction content in the digital realm has an ever-increasing footprint. And for us, during our library's redevelopment in 2017, we made a strategic decision reducing non-fiction shelving by 30%. And that was specifically because the non-fiction collection was experiencing declining borrowing, and the online sources provide superior access in terms of 24/7 and in terms of currency. But aside from the collections, what about when the students are in the library, in their non-contact times, like morning break, lunchtime, and after school? Now, it's interesting because I will now refer to pre-COVID and post-COVID, because pre-COVID, our library collaborated with the pastoral team, the school's pastoral team, and it was our sort of combined decision to ban gaming in the library. The intention was to encourage physical activity and face-to-face interactions in the school. And whilst enforcing that was a challenge, it did reduce the presence of what I would call gaming gangs in the library. But post-COVID, things changed. Our pastoral team opted for more leniency during rest and relaxation times as a result. And we now have no ban on gaming. It's a free-for-all. And in the library, we now witness a significant number of what are primarily Key Stage 3 boys gaming during morning break and lunchtime. So I think I haven't got time to reflect on that in detail. But then to ask the question, and I know schools have had, for lots of reasons, have had pressures. What about controlling phone use? Now, for our school, recently, phones during school hours have been banned. But surprisingly, I thought this was going to have a big impact. But surprisingly, this hasn't significantly reduced device impact, as students have merely shifted to other devices like tablets and laptops. So what to do? Perhaps we should be seeking professional advice. Would that be prudent? Perhaps consultation with the parents could also provide us with some valuable insights. And then I look back at myself. What does my attitude to all this say about me? Am I a digital dinosaur struggling to adapt to the modern world? Certainly, my own screen time, that of my library staff, my wife, and my son all contribute to my concern. Guys, I think that I'm not offering solutions, just unpacking my worries. Enough of me. It would be fantastic to hear your thoughts. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks very much indeed, Rob. Interesting questions and ideas there. And I've just put in the the chat box. If people have got to share, have anything to share about the use of digital devices or digital concerns as librarians, or indeed if you're being asked to play a particular role with the monitoring or the control of digital devices, what is your school's attitude to mobile phones, smartphones during the day? That would be very interesting to see. I know that in the UK, there's been a lot of talk about this because the Secretary of State has been talking about the use of digital devices in schools over the last few weeks. But the response I'm seeing from head teachers and teachers is actually we're already on top of it. And I think people have moved in specific directions. So Beatrice, if you'd like to put something in the chat box about your experience in the UK with that, that would be really interesting. Val, could we just move on to the next one? Because we're moving on to a couple of polls now, and this is a chance just to get your feedback on a number of different items, or a couple of different items. And it's this question: what might be standing in the way of developing effective library-based provision for well-being? And just think about that as I put this poll up on the screen, and see what you say. So I think everyone should be able to see that. The question is then, what might be standing in the way of developing effective library-based provision for well-being and promoting digital balance? So lack of resources dedicated to well-being materials, insufficient professional development. Both Rob and Sal have talked about the importance of PD, CPD, in the library world, and making sure that you are equipped with the knowledge to get involved with the well-being of your school. The difficulty, this is an interesting one for me, the difficulty in aligning well-being and pastoral initiatives with what's going on in your library, and challenges in measuring the impact of well-being initiatives. Just have a think, and if you could just answer one of those questions, and we'll start seeing what people think. So starting to come in now, lack of resources, difficulty in aligning well-being and pastoral initiatives. It's actually going to be pretty well spread out, I think. We've had 3 or 4 answers in. They're starting to come in more. So just give you a couple more seconds to think about what your views are. And actually, what's coming out now, I'm just going to give you 5 more seconds. It seems to be challenges in measuring the impact of well-being initiatives. Right, I'm just going to put the results up on the board now. So over half of you think that the last one, the challenges in measuring the impact of well-being initiatives. And maybe, Rob, in your sort of role as head of libraries at Alice Smith School in Kuala Lumpur, maybe you can give that a little bit of thought as we go on through to finish off this webinar, and maybe comment on that in a little bit. If anyone's got any comments specific to these questions, please do put them on the in the chat box, and we can pick them up as the discussion goes on. So thank you very much indeed for what you're saying there. And yes, I like the idea of gaming gangs as well, Sal. I wonder if anybody else has seen gaming gangs in their library. I have to say, I was in a school last week, and they have launched a really significant gaming initiative as part of their IB career-related program. And it's a magnificent room that they put together. Gaming was growing in popularity sort of in the school, just informally. And the school thought, you know what? If you can't beat them, as you say, let's join them. And they talked to the kids, and they said, we would like to do more gaming, and we'd like to learn more about the business of gaming. So they actually made it part of their curriculum. And you can do that with a special unit from the IB career-related program, the IBCP, which I thought was absolutely magnificent. Fantastic. The other ones coming in, decisions by a pastoral team from Rob. Yeah, interesting. So let's keep an eye on the chat box and move on, please, Val, to the next slide, please. And we're talking about staff training, which is a significant part of how we can become better providers, not only of well-being in the library, but also of providing a range of services to the community. So, Sal, back to you.
Right, thanks, Andy. Yeah, gaming gangs, I like that. Made me smile. So training, yeah, and linking to the wider school. Well, I think I wanted really to talk about this aspect simply by asking a series of questions. And if we've got any library leaders, which I know we have, or any school leaders here with us, maybe it's just something to have a think about. So I wonder whether, like, you consciously think about your library team's own well-being and whether you support your staff in enabling them to have the skills to enhance the well-being of the library users. So have you ensured that the following things are in place? Is your library team well equipped with the educational tools and personal development opportunities that they need to do their jobs? Is that comparable to what teachers' CPD is like? Have you provided opportunities for them to develop excellent soft skills, such as communication, empathy, leadership, things that we've shown are so crucial to well-being? Has your team received adequate training to listen, engage, and assist our users? And are they aware that every query really is an opportunity to foster a positive relationship within our community? Have you shown how this is required to promote positive well-being? Have you offered support for both physical and emotional demands of the role? Does your team have things in place like peer mentorship programs or access to professional counselling? Do they have ergonomic workspaces designed to minimise strain and maximise comfort? Do you take staff feedback seriously, or do you tend to just brush it off and think people are just moaning? And then this is really important to me, and it's something I go on and on about, but is your library staff appraisal system suitable for that very specific role that librarians have, where they're not completely academic members of the school, but they're not completely business members either? Or are they being forced into a box that doesn't quite fit for them when they're looking at appraisals? And my hunch is that the answer to that question will be no in a lot of schools. However, if the answer to most of the questions is a yes, then great job. It's fabulous that you're looking after your librarians' well-being. And as we've seen, that in turn helps them look after the well-beings of others. But if it's no, then maybe it's just time to have a little think about that area. So yeah,
it's so demanding, isn't it, Sal? You know, there's so much to think about. And what I always thought about the library teams that I worked with, and I've worked with some wonderful, wonderful library teams, is that they looked out for each other. They covered each other's back. If there was one thing that was needed in one area, another one would come into support, and so on and so forth. And I think you're right. It does come down to sort of setting the tone for that kind of self-help and openness, which I always associated with great librarian teams. But it is so demanding, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I think it just can sometimes get missed if we're not careful. And it is that knock-on effect, isn't it? By looking after the well-being of one group, then we're more inclined to look after the well-being of another. And then, I always go on about how the library is central to everything. And I think it just is that tone it sort of spreads far and wide.
I think the influence of the library is incredible. When it is at the center of everything, it's almost unseen, the way the sort of good vibes radiate into the school. And that's what I think people try to do, and they have an impact which they don't realize that they're having. And can be so, so positive. And it's interesting that we should say that it's the measuring of that impact that people find so difficult. But I can, from experience, I know that it's there. I'm going to pick up Rebecca's comment in a minute about a new study from the IB and Oxford University. But just before I do that, and perhaps ask a little bit more about other libraries of the librarians that are involved here, can we go to the next slide, please, Val? And we've got another little poll. And this is, what enhancements to your resources would have the most positive impact on your support for well-being at school? So just give that a little bit of thought. And I'm going to hopefully get this one up. And here we go. So developing your library wellbeing program. What enhancements to your resources would have the most positive impact on your support for wellbeing at school? So advanced training, more in-depth sessions or specialized thinking about how libraries technically work, emotional and physical well-being, greater emphasis on the personal development and care for your teams and for other people, technological resources, upgraded library management systems and so on. Or is it about communication and leadership development? If you could just vote for one of those, and then we'll have a look at what people think. So just go through those and get a little response in. We're starting to get results coming in. Is it about the training? Is it about supporting emotional and physical well-being? Is it about technological resources or communication and leadership? Coming in, training, communication and leadership development seems to be out front at the moment. Again, it's pretty spread. Yeah, I think that's it. And interestingly, it's the leadership and communication development that comes out with well over half of the votes. So that seems to suggest to me that people are looking to get involved in the strategic planning for the school, the development planning for the school. And I think this is really important. As a principal, you're always involved with mapping out the plan for the next year, the next 2 years, and the next 3 years. And I think it's really important that librarians make their voices heard when it comes to the idea of what they need from the leadership, from the other leaders in the school, and for their own leadership development as well. Because leadership within a library, as I say, in my opinion, has a really profound influence on the feel-good factor of any school. I think people simply love libraries, and the way that's enhanced through getting involved in your school's development plan, very important. Rebecca, just tell us about this new initiative from Oxford University and the IB. Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so they were looking into what well-being means for the different students, because everyone has a very subjective feeling about it. Even when you look into the different cultures, what means possibly for me, well-being doesn't mean it's the same for you. So they found out that in school life, there are these 4 big components. It's health, people, environment, and skills. And then they have these subcategories, like let's say in health, it means sleep or nutrition or general health. And then with people, it's about the school stuff, maybe the peers, caregivers. Then the environment, that could be, the community, or that the place is nice and just welcoming. And then the skills they develop, like resilience, self-esteem, and so on. So I think we as librarians could look into that and then look into how can we support each of these areas. So we have more of an idea how we can support them, even if it's a very subjective support. Yeah.
I think that's a really great idea. And I think it also illustrates something that's really important that underlies the significance of what a library is. And that's this. Don't just leave it to the heads of the big departments to get involved with things like initiatives from the IB. Don't just leave it to the middle leaders or the senior leaders of the school to respond to this. I think that libraries, when it comes to initiatives like this, working with the pastoral staff, the counselling staff, and indeed, everybody, the whole community, libraries can just have such a profound impact on how people feel, just simply by doing their job really well. Because a job well done in a library, as I've said from personal experience, such a profound influence on the whole school. And that feel-good bringing people in and sharing and taking people to other worlds, as you all do. Just amazing. And I think that's what it's all about in terms of people's well-being, an active, welcoming, thoughtful place where people can feel really good about themselves and about each other. Enough for me. Val, let's have the next slide, please. We're nearly there at the end. Sal, would you like to say a little bit about resource links? I know we're going to be making these live and sending out the links as PDFs with this slideshow, but just tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Yeah, so I've already kind of got a lot of those resources collated, but I just wanted to add in, you know, contributions from everyone today. So in the next few days, we'll be able to send out a list of just the let me think, kind of activities that we can do in the community. We'll be able to share hopefully some recommended reading, the academic resources that have sort of influenced what I've said today. I'll be hopefully chatting to Rebecca, because it's, you know, Rebecca, thank you for sharing the knowledge from IB and Oxford University. I didn't know about that. So it's kind of constantly evolving, constantly learning. So yeah, it's exciting to get that all shared, because I think that is the thing with this whole webinar, isn't it? That we're not presenting ourselves as like knowing so much more than everyone else. It's an opportunity that we can collaborate and really come together.
Thanks very much indeed, Sal. One of the things I'm just going to draw your attention to on that list is an organization called Empathy Lab. This is a UK-based organization, and basically it's looking at reading for developing the idea of empathetic skills amongst students. And they do a fabulous job with, particularly with older primary kids and younger secondary kids, wonderful book lists to delve into. And we'll send you some links to the Empathy Lab book lists and resources at the end of this as we follow up this webinar. Well, let's go on to the next and penultimate, I think, slide. There we go. So just advance notice of the Wednesday, May the 15th, when Rob will be talking about managing school subscriptions. And subscriptions are such an important part of the resources which you organise and manage. And it can be a slightly overwhelming task if you haven't had the training and the background in that. So Rob is going to be talking about that on May the 15th. So please join us for that. BISLN plans for next year. As I said, we want to take this forward. We want to get schools involved. In fact, we've got 120 plus schools signed up in the network at the moment, and we'll be sending the recording of this webinar to everybody on that list. But we want to tell you a little bit. We'll tell you much more detail at the next session in May about what we are planning for next year. So look out for that. I've just given a shout out for Empathy Lab. Empathy Day is on June the 6th. And what Empathy Lab are doing is if you register for participation in Empathy Day, they will send you a teaching pack so that you can prepare for the activities in June. And the activity pack includes reading lists, resources, lesson plans, session plans, etc., etc. A really first-rate organisation worth looking at. We are part of Concilium Education, and Concilium, we're all just ex-teachers, ex-school leaders, ex-administrators, ex-librarians or current librarians, and we publish International Teacher Magazine, and you'll see the link when Val sends out the resources from this particular session. You'll see the link to ITM, and what we're finding is people want to share their ideas about their work. This is a great opportunity to write short articles for International Teacher Magazine. We've just published our March edition. If you search International Teacher Magazine, you'll find us, and you can see the sort of thing that we're doing. and one of the editions this year was devoted entirely to libraries and librarians. Think about the feedback and discussion points, ideas for next year's sessions. We'd like to have your ideas. What are you thinking about? And you would like us to discuss and share and talk about next year. So if you can drop a line to Val at admin@consiliumeducation.com, that's the email address that we use to send out all the connections and links. That would be great to have your ideas for next year. And Val, perhaps you can just say, I should have done this right at the beginning. Could you just introduce yourself? Because Val is the face behind all the communication that BISLN have launched over the last few months. Val.
Hi, everyone. Most of you already have heard from me. As Andy said, we use the admin email address to send everything out, all our resources, etc. So all I would say to you is thanks for joining today. And if you do have any questions or you want to reach out at all, please do that through the admin email address, and we'll get back to you with anything that it is that you would like support from us from. So yeah, thanks very much for joining our network, and we hope that we can be all supporting one another as we go forward.
Thanks, Val. That's fantastic. And I'd just like to thank Sal and Rob for their contributions today, especially Sal, the enormous amount of work that went into that and that presentation. We've got 5 more minutes, I think, if people want to stay around and just think about some of these issues, and perhaps we can talk about your libraries or listen to you about your libraries. So Val, can we move on to the next slide? That would be great. And what book titles and websites would you recommend for the development of wellbeing through the library? If you could pop those into the chat box, we would be very, very grateful. Or later on, if you could send ideas to Val, again, admin@consiliumeducation.com, we would be very grateful, because BISLN really is like all the local library networks that you belong to. It's about sharing and networking and helping each other. A question that we've asked ourselves, how feasible is it to position the library as central to achieving positive student well-being? That's something that we need to think about. And maybe for another day, what's your approach to phone use in school libraries? We're seeing some ideas coming in for books and so on, but maybe just before we sign off, Marcella, you've joined us all the way from Caracas. If you're still there, I'm not sure if you are still there. Yes, you are. Marcella, tell us about your school, please. I'd really like to know a little bit more about it.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you? What time is it with you?
It's 5:30.
Oh gosh, in the morning.
No, but it's okay. It's fine.
You librarians, you're so devoted.
Yeah, well, my school is well, our secondary library, it was closed for the pandemic, so it really actually opened on 2022. And I started working. I'm a teacher, and I was a primary teacher for 15 years, and I wasn't working at the time, and they just called me and see if I wanted to take care of the library, which was my dream job. So, I did take some IB workshops about library roles and stuff like that. And we're a very small school. We have 330 students in all. In secondary, we probably have 120. So it's not a very big school. We are, we do have our really nice space, but we are working on getting more resources, mostly digital and ebooks and stuff like that. The library is a safe place, I think. I've had a lot of kids that, maybe don't fit in. And then they go to the library and they make their own little groups, so we've seen that go through. About phone use, the school, we ban all digital devices, but of course, they go to the bathroom, they get them. It's not as easy as it seems, but we're working on it. And I love the webinar because I have a lot of things about wellness that, I want to introduce to our teachers. And that's about it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this. And I think one of the reasons why we thought setting up BISLN was so worthwhile was that there are so many people like you who haven't had any training necessarily, formal training as a librarian in small schools. And the more networking you can get, the better. So we've got you guys very much in mind when we hold sessions like this, and when we ask other people to share their experience from different parts of the world, because of the value that they have in what they've learned for everybody. And we've got those small schools especially in mind.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I really
great,
appreciate all
fantastic.
this webinars.
I hope you found it useful.
I did. I got many ideas, and when we actually do a lot of the stuff that you guys were talking about, so I feel great.
Oh, that's another good point. It's the affirmation that, sometimes, especially in schools, librarians are working kind of on their own. They fall between the faculty and the admin and so on. And am I doing the right thing? Should I be pushing this? And when you hear your colleagues in sessions like this saying, go for it, Marcella, then you feel that more empowered. And
no, I do. I do have the support, I have to say. I have a lot of support from everybody. So it's my dream job. I'm very happy. So everything's wonderful.
Fantastic. Yevgeny, are you there still? Maybe you could talk a little bit about your school and what you're doing. Are you there, Yevgeny? Maybe Yevgeny's signed off, perhaps. And I don't know your full name. I've got down on the name A. Parashikin. Are you there? Would you like to tell us about your school and what you're doing there and what your school is? Perhaps you're there? No? Okay. Perhaps not.
Time's ticked on, hasn't it?
Time has ticked on. So I think we're going to call it a day there. Look, thanks to Rob, thanks to Sal, thanks to Val for all the work you've done in putting this together.
Thank you too, Andy.
I've learned a lot just listening to you all, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next time on May the 15th. And in the meantime, there'll be newsletters and emails going out from Val, and we look forward to seeing you there on the 15th and indeed next year. Just like to thank you all very, very much for what you're doing as librarians, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. We'll just leave the session open for another minute or so. If you want to put any suggestions in the chat box, please do it now. Thanks very much for everything you're doing, and we'll see you soon. Rebecca's come in. Would love to see a webinar on AI. Yes, I think that would be a popular one. Thanks, Rebecca. Any other ideas? Just keep those coming in. Teresa, I haven't asked you. Teresa, you're in the Czech Republic. Just tell us a little bit about your school, what school it is and what you're doing there, if you're there.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, Teresa. Good to hear you. Just as people putting their comments in, be lovely to hear about your school.
First of all, thank you for a useful webinar. I've got a lot of ideas how to enhance our library. We are quite new school, and we have just purchased the subscription of EBSCO for high school. And we are working on getting more materials, physical books, and to enhance better community and to create well-being in our school. But we are a little bit fighting in case of space. So we are trying to find appropriate spot where our library would feel great and welcoming.
See, those are the sort of practical things. Where can you find more space? And how people have done that in the past. That's a whole session on its own. Teresa, lovely to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to close the webinar down. Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for being with us today, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Val will be in touch very shortly. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the discussion, and we look forward to seeing you at the next networking and webinar session of BISLN. Thank you.